Hi, I'm Cash with CashedOutCars.
And I'm Matt.
And in today's video, we're going to be replacing the front brakes on this Golf-R. Let's get started. The first thing to do is to take off your wheel. I would highly recommend cracking all the lug bolts loose while the car is on the ground. Next, you have to remove the two bolts that hold the carrier to the hub. We're getting the bottom one with the impact gun here. And the top one here we're going to try to get with this breaker bar. With those two bolts out, you have to loosen up the caliper a little bit, and to do that we pry on it against the caliper and the rotor. And this just opens up the gap between the pads and the rotor and allows you to get that caliper loose and free it up. And then you'll want something to support your caliper so that it's not hanging by the lines. Also, when you're working on this, be very careful not to twist your lines and sensors because that could lead to bad things down the road. Next, you'll have to crack this Torx head screw loose, and this is the only thing that holds the rotor on after that caliper is off, so just pull that right out. And then you're going to need a really big hammer or a really small hammer, and to hit it really hard to get the rotor off. We prefer the big hammer method. It's a really good idea to thread in one of your lug bolts so that way once that rotor comes free it doesn't fall on your toe or fall on something else that you don't want to break. There we go. If you live in an area that's snowy or has a lot of salt on the roads, now's a really good time to wire brush down your hubs and get all the rust off. This will prevent your brake rotors from freezing themselves to this and make them easier to get off next time.
That's a little bit. We're in there.
I sort of missed the shot there, but the last thing to do here is just to pop that retaining clip off, and this will release the pads and allow your slider to actually slide around in there. So now we could remove our brake pads here. The one that goes towards the inside of the car is very easy to remove, and the one that goes towards the outside requires a bit of a screwdriver because it clips into the piston. And that'll just pop right out with a little work here. And then your pads are out of the car. Do note that on one side of the car there will be this brake pad sensor, and to get that off you have to take the sensor and actually push it the opposite direction of taking it off. Push down on this lever here and then pull it out and you'll be able to release it. Next you could take off your slider here, and this will allow you to re-grease it and also to push back in the piston to make room for the pads with fresh meat on them. Now you have to compress the piston in the caliper, and to do this we're just using a C-clamp. We are protecting the caliper with some wood and using that old brake pad as a bit of a buffer between the clamp and the piston. While you're doing that, just crack the top to your brake fluid reservoir and put some rags around this. That way if it overflows while you're pushing the fluid back into the system, you'll be able to catch it. If you ever topped off your system, there's a good chance that fluid will come out at this stage. Next you'll want to grease up all the surfaces that slide, so you want to grease up those pins there, and then also grease where the pad rides on that slide. And obviously do that on both sides. Once it's all greased up, you could put that slide back in. So you have to line up those fingers through the caliper right there, and then you could put those slides back to where they came from. Can he get it in? That is the question. Yes, he can.
Nice.
Good to go. And now we can install the brake pads. Next, you have to get your brake pad into that piston in there. And to do that, line it up, and then you could slide something through the front of the caliper like that, and then use a mallet and tap it into place. Good to go. And you could slide in your other brake pad. Just line up the ears with where it slides in. In place. Next you'll put that retaining clip back on, so line up one side like that, and then all you have to do is pry the other side down into place, and that is all set.
Nice.
And that retaining clip is back in place. Next you could put your new rotor on, and we like to put one bolt in now too, just as a little bit of a safety so the rotor can't fall off. And then once that's in there you'll put your little Torx head screw back in just to hold the rotor in place for good. Next, you'll want to spray down your rotor with brake clean. And what this will do is this will get all the grease and contaminants off of your rotor and make it so your pad's bedded nice and don't slip on grease or anything. It sort of goes without saying, but as you're working on your brakes, be very careful to not get grease on the rotor or the pads, because that'll make it slippery and you don't want your brakes slippery. Alright, so the very last thing to do here is to get your caliper back onto your car. So you have to line up those first 2 bolts that you took off there. It's really good here to have help to line those 2 up. And then we'll show you how to torque them down, and then the front brakes will be done. When you go to put that caliper on there, it might be a little bit tricky. You do have to make sure that that piston was all the way recessed in the caliper, and that'll give you enough clearance to easily slide it on. Last thing to do is just to torque down those bolts. So guys, that's going to wrap up this video. All the links to where you could get the parts used in this video are in the description down below. Please leave any tips, tricks, or corrections for anything we did in this video in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe for more. I hope you stick around for the next one.